Before beginning any meditation, it can be useful to ask ourselves, is there anything right now in this moment that must be attended to? Is there any emergency? Is there any fire that needs to be put out? Understandably, we might have some preoccupations. Depending on the time of day, perhaps we have things we have to do today, or things still left undone at the end of the day. But do these need to be attended to right now? Or can they wait for 1 hour? In my experience, 99.9% of the time, these issues can wait. And the 0.1% where the issues can't wait, we'll have to meditate later. So, from that sense of spaciousness, of non hurrying, come into the present moment, this precious moment. Hello, welcome, namaste, everybody. Thank you so much for those of you joining me in the room. Thank you so much for joining me on Zoom. And thank you to you beautiful souls listening to the recording afterward. Welcome to a little Dharma talk that I like to call Living from the Heart. All about this 18-inch spiritual journey, which can sometimes take many lifetimes, simply to travel from the head to the heart. And this talk is actually part 2 of a 2-week series, all about discovering a deeper meaning behind common Zen stories. And we have new stories to examine this week. So don't worry if you weren't here last week, because we have new material to explore. And today's story is so popular, it's sometimes referred to as a legend. And the story follows a great murderer known as Angulimala. And as Angulimala was walking through a town square, all the people in the town square immediately recognized Angulimala, so they ran away into their shops, into their homes, and away from this murderous figure. And while everyone else ran away, the Buddha was walking calmly along the street. And Angulimala decided that he was going to kill the Buddha. So we started to chase after the Buddha, who kept walking at a very slow and mindful pace. And no matter how fast Angulimala tried to run after the Buddha, the distance between Angulimala and the Buddha remained the same. Angulimala would chase and chase and chase. The Buddha would walk and walk and walk. And still, Angulimala could not catch up to the Buddha. So finally, panting and exhausted, Angulimala shouted at the Buddha, "Please stop." At that point, the Buddha turned around, looked at Angulimala with eyes of compassion, and said to him, "I have stopped long ago. It is you who have not stopped. It is I who have stopped committed. It is I who have stopped committing acts that perpetuate the suffering of other beings." And it is said that Angulimala, upon hearing these words, gave up his life of violence and murder and took up the life of the monastic, a life of nonviolence committed to alleviating the suffering of all beings. And this is such a wonderful story with multiple layers of meaning. The first, which we might recognize, is that this is a story. And it's not necessarily based on actual historical events. This is a story with truths that we can bring into our own life. So even when we hear of this murderous figure known as Angulimala, this is all about our own violent tendencies within ourselves. There's a reason the Bhagavad Gita is set on a battlefield, and it's not because we are here to learn about the tactics of war. The battlefield represents our own inner conflict. The outer war is a representation of the inner war within ourselves. So Angulimala represents our own tendency and propensity towards violence and the committing of harmful acts against other human beings. And if you know a little bit of Sanskrit, the words that make up this person's name might sound a little familiar. First, we have Anguli, which literally means fingers, not to be confused with Anjali, which is where we bring our hands together in prayer. Although there's definitely some similarity between these two words. And of course, bringing our hands together in Anjali Mudra does, of course, bring the fingers together. And Mala, you might recognize from Malasana or squat pose, also referencing the necklace or garland that one would wear around one's neck. So it's not even squat pose, it is in fact garland or necklace pose. So Angulimala, this murderer, is known for having a necklace of fingers from all the victims that he murdered. So again, a very violent image we see from this figure. And then we have the Buddha asking Angulimala if he can stop, if he will stop, because the Buddha himself has stopped a long time ago. And this is essentially a lesson in ahimsa, meaning not harming, one of the fundamental tenets of both Buddhist and yogic and Jain traditions. But I love this question and I love this inquiry. Can you stop? Can we stop? Are there certain compulsions we have in our life that we are unable to stop ourselves? So, this is why we remove distractions as we enter into the meditation hall, as we set aside our phones and belongings and take off our shoes to step onto the yogic mat, because we are removing distractions and removing the desire to do so many things. Another story of the Buddha. When the Buddha was asked, "Sir, what do you and your monks practice?" He replied, "Well, we sit, we walk, and we eat." The questioner continued, "But, sir, everyone sits, walks, and eats." And the Buddha told him, "When we sit, we know that we are sitting. When we walk, we know that we are walking. When we eat, we know that we are eating." In our practice of cultivating presence, we discover rarely are we present in this moment. The mind is often off doing countless other things. Even nowadays, when we eat, we don't taste what we're eating. We're looking at our phone, we're talking to a friend. We're not fully present with our activity. Walking down the street, we don't feel our feet on the earth. We have headphones in, we're listening to a podcast. We are looking at our phone, even as we're walking down the street. Even some places you see people eating as they're walking down the street. So, in cultivating present moment attention, we also remove distractions and we remove this tendency to do so many things. As the saying goes, multitasking is possible, but multi-focusing is not. So, it's so easy to distract ourselves from being with whatever is happening right here and right now. And can we stop? Can we stop this tendency to run after so many things? Along with this idea of stopping, can we stop judging? Can we stop criticizing? In this practice of ahimsa, can we stop harming ourselves? And can we stop harming others? This is an essential idea in Patanjali's Yoga Sutras. When Patanjali says yoga, chitta, vritti, nirodha, nirodha means stopping. It means sensation. We are looking to calm the turbulence of the mind. So when we hear the Buddha ask, "Can you stop?" I stopped a long time ago. Can we stop the monkey mind from jumping from thought branch to thought branch? This is what the entire yogic method is designed to do, to make ourselves one pointed in our concentration and in our meditation. And this is hard for many people. It's hard to practice such a strong physical practice of yoga without criticizing ourselves and our body for not fully being able to enter into a yoga pose, to stop comparing ourselves to other people that might be in the room practicing yoga, to stop turning it into a competition. Hafiz writes this: "My dear, is it true that your mind is sometimes like a battering ram running all through the city, shouting so madly inside and out about the 10,000 things that do not matter?" So when we think about Angulimala, he's running after the Buddha, and we are encouraged ourselves to stop running after so many things, to stop even chasing satisfaction and material pleasures, to find a peace that is available in the here and in the now. There's a story of a man on a horse running so quickly through a town square. And a villager there asks the man, or shouts to the man as he's running, "Where are you going?" The man says, "I don't know. You better ask the horse." And when you do hear of horses in yogic philosophy, the horses are always a metaphor for our senses. and how we are always running from one sensual pleasure to the next, or simply seeking to gratify one sense to the next, always chasing after many of the material pleasures that exist in this world, but never finding peace exactly where we are. So yoga is taming the horses. Yoga is restraining the horses. One of the earliest definitions of this term yoke, of this term yoga, this linking together that we are cultivating, is we are yoking the horses to the carriage. We are taming the horses. So we have to recognize how much of our time and how much of our days we spend running from one thing to the next, how much of our time we spend chasing after the things that we want and running away from the things that we don't want. So the Zen poet Ryokan says, if you want to find the meaning, stop chasing after so many things. Shira Ehrlichman put it this way: what a strange day when I found out what I was chasing wasn't running. Hmm. I love that line. What I was chasing wasn't running. Because here we are, chasing after happiness, chasing after peace, running around looking for love. When guess what? Just like the Buddha, your happiness isn't running away. Love isn't running away. It is to be found right here and right now through stopping. And in today's times, this is particularly difficult because our modern world has focused a lot on material pleasures and comforts at the expense of our spiritual development and practice. We are materially very rich, but spiritually very poor. You can go to the grocery store and find every taste imaginable for your palate and seek to buy and consume as many things as possible to satisfy the palate. But this will not provide the lasting happiness that we seek. And nowadays, we all have in our own pockets a device that will also offer so many distractions, so many material presentations for the eyes. And we have to ask ourselves, can we stop? Can we stop scrolling? The infinite scroll was quite the invention to distract our human attention. We can thumb and thumb and thumb our way and endlessly scroll through so many apps to get those tiny little hits of dopamine to keep going, to keep going, to keep going. So it can be especially hard to stop scrolling, to put our phones down, to put our phones off and stop chasing after so many things. John O'Donohue put it this way: our neon times have neglected and evaded the depth kingdoms of interiority in favor of the ghost realms of cyberspace. We have unlearned the patience and attention of lingering at the thresholds where the unknown awaits us. We have become haunted pilgrims, addicted to distraction, and driven by the speed and color of images. So, the basic idea is that if we want peace, peace is already here. We simply have to stop disturbing it. So it's quite telling that Patanjali used the word chitta vritti, mental turbulence. It conjures up images of an ocean or a lake that is being pummeled by wind and storms, and it's going to make the water quite turbulent. And in our task of calming the mind, of reducing the turbulence in the water, it soon becomes quite evident that attempts to calm the turbulence of the mind only create more turbulence. It's like trying to smooth water with your hand. It's only going to create more turbulence. Trying to stop the mind is only going to create more disturbance in the mind. So our task is to stop disturbing the mind. So in this meditation practice, we call it samatha, which can be translated to mean tranquility, tranquility of the mind, tranquility of awareness, serenity, calm, meditative calm, or quietude of the heart. But it can also be referred to as stopping, because when we do stop creating turbulence in our lives, when we do stop chasing after so many things, a natural calmness and a natural tranquility arises in the heart and mind. So Swami Satchidananda says, nothing can bring you lasting happiness, but you have it already until you disturb it. So we have to recognize happiness, love, acceptance, presence. These are all internal qualities. We will not find them outside in the external world. Certainly, there are environments and things in the external world that help to induce these feelings within ourselves. However, everything in this ephemeral world is always changing. So none of the external things that we look towards to create an internal state is going to last. So we have to look within and we have to look deeply. And only by stopping chasing after so many things, can we begin to look deeply into this realm of interiority, into our hearts and into our minds. So a final lesson we can take from this story is we want to meet whatever is happening within us with loving kindness and compassion. So this is the lesson. Angulimala met the Buddha, a figure of love, light, and compassion. So we also are encouraged to meet our own struggles with kindness and compassion. So we meet the anger in our heart with kindness and compassion. This is why I've never been a big fan of the story about the two wolves. You've probably heard it, where an older elder is explaining to a young child or student or disciple, and sometimes it's wrapped in Native American myth, where the elder says, inside of you, there is two wolves. There is an angry wolf and there is a nice wolf, and they are constantly fighting. And the child asks, which one will survive? And the elder says, the one that you feed. And I do love the lesson that if there's anything we want to grow in our life, we have to nourish it. If you want your relationship to get better, nourish your relationship. If you want the love in your heart to grow, we have to nourish it. However, I don't think this is the appropriate way to work through internal conflict. Because in my experience, if we do have an angry part of ourselves and a loving part of ourselves, our task is to have the loving part of ourselves love the angry part of ourselves, to nurture it, to hold it in order to see it for what it is. Because even our more challenging emotions like anger and frustration and envy and jealousy, these are all lessons. These are all messengers. And we won't learn the lesson that they have to teach us if we shun it away. Or in the case of the two wolves, if we starve it. It's not going to pan out. So there are certain limits to these stories and the lessons that they tell. So we are here to meet even our most challenging emotions from a place of warm-hearted presence. And we naturally can embody this warm-hearted presence as soon as we wake up. And that is the essence of the Buddha. The Buddha was just one person, Siddhartha Gautama, who woke up to the nature of reality and the nature of who we are. And we all have Buddha nature. We all have a piece inside of us that has an unstoppable flow, an unobstructed energy of love, compassion, and kindness. So we are fundamentally here to wake up. And what is waking up? It's stop sleeping. It's stopping sleeping. So this is our next lesson of can we stop? Can you stop sleeping and wake up to the true nature of reality? So when we think about how our horses in our life are guiding us to places that we don't even know where we're going, we can also see those horses as our own unconscious patterning. So it was Jung who said that if we don't make our unconscious conscious, it will rule our life and we will call it fate. In other words, we all have unconscious patterning inside of us that's guiding our behavior, and our behavior will continue to produce our destiny in life until we address the unconscious behavior. So we can easily be like the man on the horse, and the horse is running. And as far as we're concerned, we have no idea where we're going because the horse is what is guiding us. So in our practice of awakening, we are here to awake from said unconscious patterns and awaken to the nature of reality. And when we do wake up to the nature of reality, we realize that nothing lasts, that everything is changing. So, along with stop sleeping and stopping sleeping, we can also stop believing that things are permanent, that anything in this life will last. So, Jennifer Wellwood put it this way in her poem: "My friends, let's grow up. Let's stop pretending we don't know the deal here. Or if we truly haven't noticed, let's wake up and notice. Look, everything that can be lost will be lost. It's simple. How could we have missed it for so long? Let's grieve our losses fully like ripe human beings. But please, let's not be so shocked by them. Let's not act so betrayed, as though life had broken her secret promise to us. Impermanence is life's only promise to us, and she keeps it with ruthless impeccability. To a child, she seems cruel, but she is only wild, and her compassion exquisitely precise, brilliantly penetrating, luminous with truth. She strips away the unreal to show us the real. This is the true ride. Let's give ourselves to it. Let's stop making deals for safe passage. There isn't one anyway, and the cost is too high. We are not children anymore. The true human adult gives everything for what cannot be lost. Let's dance the wild dance of no hope." Hmm. So, in this process of awakening, in this process of stopping sleeping, we mustn't fool ourselves. It's easy to think that we have attained a certain level of spiritual practice. But as the saying goes, gain is illusion and loss is enlightenment. It's so easy to fool ourselves and trick ourselves into thinking that we are progressing forward on the spiritual path rather than returning to the love and the light that is always here in each and every moment. This brings us to our next story. There is a famous story of a Zen master named Su Dong Po, who wrote a poem expressing just how enlightened he had become. I bow my head to the heaven within heaven, hairline rays illuminating the universe. The eight winds cannot move me, sitting still upon the purple golden lotus. Impressed by himself, Su Dongpo sent a servant to hand carry this poem to his friend across the lake to another Zen master, Fo Yin. He was sure that his friend would be equally impressed. When the manuscript returned, Su Dongpo found the word fart was written in large letters across it. He was shocked. He burst into anger. How dare he insult me like this? That lousy old monk, he's got a lot of explaining to do. Full of indignation, he rushed out of his house and ordered a boat to ferry him to the other shore as quickly as possible. He wanted to find Fo Yin and demand an apology. However, Fo Yin's door was closed, and on the door was a piece of paper. For Su Dongpo, the paper had the following 2 lines. The 8 winds cannot move me, but one fart blows me across the river. The most important lesson here is that Su Dongpo used it as an opportunity to learn and to be humble and to recognize that he still had very far to go. And I love this story, and I return to it a lot. If you go back to some of my earlier talks, I'm sure I've told this story quite a few times. And I love the ancientness of the story and how it tells present moment truths about the human condition. Because I have found throughout many of my studies that both psychology and ancient wisdom teachings have the same idea that by and large, human nature hasn't changed that much. It's so easy to look at all our modern inventions like trains and planes and automobiles and think that we are a truly different world than that which existed 500 or 2,000 years ago. But the human psyche has largely remained the same, and human consciousness has largely remained the same. And we find the same mental habits and conditioning that we feel now in stories from ancient times. So, centuries before Ram Dass did his famous quote, "If you think you're enlightened, go spend a week with your family." Here we have a story about how we often think and feel we have some extraordinary insight on the path and during our practice, but then reality hits us in the face and we are brought back down to the ground of humility. We also can take from this story just how enraged and how immediately enraged Su Dongpo felt upon feeling that his manuscript had been ruined and insulted by the other Zen master. So, in the practice of our meditation, again, centuries before Ram Dass said that meditation is noticing the itch without needing to scratch it, here we have a story about cultivating responsibility. It is our responsibility to cultivate responsibility, to be able to respond to, in this example, criticism and judgment in our life from a place of love and compassion. So, another more modern story involves a mother shopping with her child. And this mother is shopping around the grocery store. And another shopper at this grocery store is also going around buying their items and noticing what is happening with this mother and daughter. And the daughter is quite young, a bit of a toddler. And you know how toddlers are, they can be quite rambunctious. So the toddler is pulling down on the mother's dress and saying, why are you buying this? Why are you buying this? I want candy. Can we get some candy? And the mother goes, "It's okay, Samantha. Let's simply calm down." And as the mother and daughter continue to shop and the other shopper continues to observe, the daughter starts to push and pull a bunch of things off the shelves and throw them on the floor. And the mother says, "It's okay, Samantha. We're almost to the checkout line and we're almost home. And after that, we can have a nice nap." And the shopper continues to observe the mother and daughter, and they get to the checkout lane. And as they're checking out, the daughter continues to yell, continues to throw a fit, continues to pull things off the shelf, and continues to put candy on the little conveyor belt in order to get the mother to buy candy. And the mother says, "Okay, let's calm down, Samantha. We're almost home. We're almost to the car." And finally, this mother and daughter, they get to the parking lot, and this other shopper who had been watching them the whole time went up to the mother and daughter and said, I just want to applaud you for how regulating you are with your daughter and how you're encouraging your daughter, Samantha, to just be patient and be calm." And the mother turns to her and says, "Actually, I'm Samantha. Jennifer is my daughter." I told that story and some people got confused. So I tend to explain that the mother was talking to herself the whole time and saying, "Samantha, please remain calm," was her talking to herself. So we are here to learn to self-regulate, to learn to calm our own challenging emotions, to learn to let emotions run their course, and to stop disturbing and perpetuating them. Now, like any story, when we have greater context into spiritual teachings, we can extrapolate different meanings. And I always point out in Sudong Po's poem, he mentions how the eight winds cannot move him. And the eight winds is a specific reference to the eight worldly winds that comes from Buddhist thought. Those eight winds are pleasure and pain, praise and blame, fame and disrepute, gain and loss. And I find that in the yogic world, mental turbulence is often explained with the metaphor of water, but Buddhist psychology tends to be a little bit more about wind and about air. So a metaphor is often used where a teacher asks his disciple, "Can you catch your thoughts?" And the disciple says no. And the master says, "That's because trying to catch your thoughts is like trying to catch the wind with your cloak. It simply can't be done. We cannot stop our thoughts from coming and going." So, too, in this life, we have the eight worldly winds that we cannot control: pleasure and pain, fame and disrepute, praise and blame, gain and loss. So, when I say that spiritual teachings and the findings of psychology are the same, before we had famous people and famous celebrities and famous pop stars have either 15 minutes of fame and then fall into disrepute, or encounter some scandal or some truth about their character comes out and suddenly they're not famous anymore. We have the eight worldly winds. We have times where we are famous and times we are not, times we are feeling pleasure and times we are in pain. So this is a teaching of duality. We have this duality of ups and downs. So you might win the lottery and then have a lot of gain, and then you might gamble it all away and have a lot of loss. This is about the human condition. All of these stories are about the human condition. Now, there's something a little cheeky going on here, something a little humorous going on here that I think it's helpful to point out, because you get the sense that Su Dong-po and Master Fo Yin in this story are good friends. Here they are writing letters to each other and having correspondence with each other. So you can tell this story is probably not the first time that they interacted. So there's a saying: when two Zen masters meet each other on the road, they need no introduction. Thieves recognize one another instantaneously. So there's a little recognition between two Zen masters, a little, ah ha ha, I know what you are up to. So when you do get into comparative religious studies and the history of many religions and philosophy, one of the things you discover is just how certain traditions get absorbed into other cultures, and what gets left and what gets changed and what is kept. So we see this with the practice of yoga. Yoga, by and large, in the United States, has become largely a physical exercise. As it was absorbed into the Western mind, a lot of its rich spiritual and philosophical history was kind of discarded in favor of more materialistic desires of physical attainment. Now, this is normal. This happens across time and across culture. So Buddhism did originate in India, but then it traveled to other places in the world. And when it traveled to China, it was transformed. And when it traveled to Japan, it was transformed again. And it became a totally new practice known as Zen Buddhism. So Japanese culture has always been highly ritualistic. And when Buddhism came to Japan, Buddhist and Zen practice also became highly ritualistic. There became a right way to do things. So this is also a Zen story. And think that there's a little correspondence going on between our two masters in this story. And it reminds me of an ancient system of poetry from Japan called Sudoko or Samonka, which is a specific poetry that was created to be a dialogue between two people, where one verse of the poem be written, and then the poem would be given to somebody to either finish the poem or write another verse, and then this correspondence would begin to happen. So we see this correspondence between these two Zen masters, and it does remind me of these forms of poems that were also correspondence. And often in these types of poems, the correspondence is between lover and beloved. So, from the first century, there was this poem composed by Mikata no Sami and his wife. And Mikata no Sami wrote this: Tied up, it loosens. Untied, it's too long. My love's hair. Nowadays, I can't see it. Has she combed it together? Reply: Everyone now says my hair is too long and I should tie it up. But the hair you gazed upon, I'll leave in tangles. And a more recent modern anime had this poem: A faint clap of thunder, clouded skies. Perhaps rain comes. If so, will you stay here with me? Reply: A faint clap of thunder. Even if rain comes not, I will stay here together with you. So there's a dialogue here. There's a correspondence between two people that care for each other. And in the case of our Zen masters, they are mirrors to each other, reminding the other to stay humble on this path of awakening. And I think this is the best thing that we as human beings can do for each other. We can be mirrors to each other. I think we all know that quote that beauty is in the eye of the beholder, meaning it is a subjective experience. What is beauty? And in partnership, this is very promising because we can see the beauty in another and reflect that beauty back so that they recognize it. We, through loving relationships, can bring out the best in the other person by seeing the best in the other person. This is why Thomas Merton, when he described his own mystical awakening, he said he saw everyone as God see them, and he saw the secret inner beauty. So, in our conversation, in our dialogue, in our correspondence, we can each be mirrors to the other, reflecting back the goodness that we are. So, we are here together. We are all in this together. This is the role of the Sangha, along with the Buddha and the Buddha nature we all have, along with the Dharma and these teachings and beautiful stories. We also have the Sangha, the spiritual community, which is a key part of the path. None of us can do this alone. None of us will do this alone. And it's up to our Sangha to be reminding each other in this remindfulness practice to stay present, to stay humble, to be loving, and to tune in to the spark of divine that is within each and every one of us. So I'll give one final story, and this is a short one. This isn't a Zen story. This is about Saint Francis for my friends over there in Saint Francis, Saint Francisco, San Francisco. In midwinter, Saint Francis is calling out to an almond tree, "Speak to me of God." And the almond tree breaks into bloom. It comes alive. The lesson here is simple. There is no other way of witnessing God but by aliveness. So as we are mirrors to each other, as we are there to each other, we can remind each other and ourselves that to be alive in this life is divine. All the aliveness in this moment is divine. To be alive, to be here in this moment is a miracle. All the miracles of life are here. The kingdom of God is here. The pure land of the Buddha is here. Peace, love, compassion are all here to be remembered, to be rediscovered, to be cultivated, and to be reflected back. And this is our practice, one of deepening. As we go deeper into these spiritual stories, we go deeper into the nature of the heart and deeper into our spiritual practice. So, with that, let's straighten up, relax the shoulders, rest your hands, take an inhale. And as you inhale, recognize this taking in of the breath means that you are alive. And as you are already alive, you are already awake. There is already the flower of joy, the lotus blossom of joy blossoming within you. All we have to do is stop disturbing the mind, disturbing the water, and allow these qualities within our heart to naturally emerge and naturally blossom. Christy Charchel writes, Namaste, my friend. I see the light inside you. No matter the joy or sorrow that is in your heart right now, let us sit together in noble silence or conscious conversation. Let us grow together with compassion and healing grace. Let us wake up together, each as a mirror to the other, a reminder of the goodness, the truth of who we are. Namaste, my friends. Thank you for sharing your practice and presence with me. May we see beyond the surfaced waves. May we cherish the sacred in all beings, and may we find our way to lasting peace. May we each be mirrors to the other, reflecting the good back to each other. May we support each other on this path of awakening to the love and light within. Namaste.